Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern, and today we're going to imbibe. We're going to have some drinks, maybe on air, maybe not, I don't know. With me today is Meredith Mills, who is the female founder of the original Southside. Now, I'm not from Chicago, and when we first moved here, there's a group of friends who likes to pronounce Southside like this, Southside. So is that something you hear?
Not yet, but I love it. So
I can't unhear that now. But welcome to the show, and thank you for finding me. It's always makes me giggle when people are like, hey, I've got somebody who wants to be on your show. I'm like, bring her on. So cheers to you. And I'd love you to tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do. And what is this? What is the South Side?
absolutely. Well, again, sometimes even though you reach out, you never know. Sometimes you can still have a big fat no. So we're really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm excited to chat more. And so for those of you who do not know what a South Side is, it does actually harken to like the 1920s Chicago area where you have, gorgeous. So you have the north side of Chicago, which had the good imports from Canada. And then you had the south side of Chicago, which, the legend has it, it's like that classic bathtub gin that was super disgusting. So bartenders in the area had to disguise the taste as best as they could. So that's where the citrus and the herbs and the sugar come in. And so you have this south side cocktail. This is a funny one because even like the most legendary living bartenders really can't agree on how it's made or served. And so some recipes you'll see have vodka, some have lime juice, but the quote unquote original, which is why we have it in the name, uses the gin, lemon, and mint.
Oh, all right. So I'm smarter than I was 5 minutes ago
Correct.
because I thought that this, I'm going to show you guys this can again. So I also have to share, not only did you reach out to me, I got my first box of swag, and this is so adorable. I got a 4-pack of this adorable box with 4 gin cocktails, right? I got a hint of lemon and mint, and then I got a hat, which is so cute. Like I should have worn it. And I got 4 little cup, just in time for being outside here in Chicago, which is very short. But this whole time I thought Southside was just a location. I, again, not being from here, I had no idea that it's a drink. So here on the North Shore where I live, can I walk into any bar and order a Southside and I will be given some sort of gin drink?
You should be. And so a lot of Southside drinkers I find actually also on the East Coast and kind of like New York, Long Island, Connecticut area. So it's funny how it has expanded, but I grew up in Oklahoma and then I went to college and grad school in Texas, and no one there was super familiar with a Southside either. And it's effectively a Tom Collins with a little bit of mint. So it was one of those recipes during Prohibition that just didn't take off like the others. Super delicious, deserves its, time in the sun like we're doing now. But no, please do not feel bad that you didn't know, because for the longest time, that was part of our story where my mom, unbeknownst to her, was actually making Southsides, but we didn't know that they were Southsides. So, yeah.
All right. Wow. Okay. So to me, comes in a can, and like everybody knows about other canned brands. You
Right.
got your High Noon and the White Claw and everything. And ultimately, especially during COVID, I started to use these guys as a mixer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because it's a really good base for the rest of the alcohol. Now, I am not a fan of the gin because I got sick on gin. I was really not a good drinker back in my early 20s. And
were any of us. I
Yeah,
mean,
I didn't have, like, an off switch necessarily, and, the way I'd mix a drink was, like, this much Coke and that much whiskey. So the gin, it's a long story, but the gin really did me in, and for a very long time, I didn't have any gin. And one of my kids, my eldest, is a fan of gin, and when you have a really good gin martini, it's
mm,
okay, but I still had that little, like, reaction. But yours didn't give me that reaction, but I did use it as a mixer, so
I
and
love
it's
that.
really good. Yeah, I love this. So, okay, so Tom Collins, yeah, I know a Tom Collins, and now I know about this. So, do you make other flavors, or it's just the original Southside and that's it?
Just the original Southside for now. We get asked quite a bit kind of what's next and what's in the pipeline. We have a couple things in the works, but what I wanted to do when we launched this was kind of have that singular focus because I didn't want to divide my attention across a bunch of other flavors or types. So we stuck with that. Again, it was my mom's recipe, so it was kind of what I knew and
Hmm.
it just is also kind of a confidence builder to be like I know this has power and standing. Like I can put all these resources behind it and then if that goes well, we can evaluate from there versus I've seen this a lot in my beauty background where brands automatically assume because they have one really good product that consumers are going to want to buy five others and it's so expensive to do that, and I think a lot of RTDs also launch with a couple flavors, sometimes even different spirit spaces, like, you get the multi-pack where some are tequila, some are vodka, and just to make everything easier, honestly, because this was an industry that I didn't have any experience with, I was like, "Let's just see how this one goes for now."
Yeah. All right. So you touched on something about beauty. So why don't you tell everybody your origin story? What was the inspiration that you're like, hey, I could do this and I'm going to do this? And I would love to talk about what you found easy and
Yeah,
difficult. I had Mara Smith on, the female
yeah.
founder of Inspire Tequila, and women in this industry are probably like a handful. And so I love to talk to female founders in general. So tell us where you came from and how this all evolved.
So, as far back as I can remember on the cocktail side, my mom, her name's Leah, she was making this craft cocktail every single summer. I grew up in Oklahoma, like I said, where it gets very hot. And so this really refreshing combination of lemon and whatever gin we had on hand because the lake is in a fairly rural part of Oklahoma, as well as mint and again, like truly the ingredients that she had in the pantry, she would make her summertime cooler. And so, I'm not going to tell you that I drank underage, but you can read between the lines, sneaking a
Well,
sip.
Oklahoma, I'm sorry, I think like the drinking age is like 16, isn't it, or
It should
something?
be. It might it might as well be. So,
Yeah, I went to Mizzou. I've met some people
okay.
from Oklahoma.
So
Yeah,
you get it. And
yeah.
with the Southern drinking culture, and so keeping that in kind of the back of my mind, that was like on a personal side, any party that I was invited to, anywhere that I was going, I was like a one trick pony. This is the recipe I was bringing. You could pretty much expect that. And so when COVID hit, I was working in the beauty industry. I was doing brand management and product innovation, specifically at the time for a teenage acne brand. So
Mm.
I was literally staring at breakouts day in and day out, which again, super important products. I have struggled with my skin my entire life. And I just wanted a little something to feed my brain outside of the brand that I was working on, living in LA. Beaches closed for a little bit, so it was time to embrace this passion project, and the reason that it got started was I was doing some work at the University of Southern California for a supplemental consumer behavior program that I went through, and one of the class projects was to create a ready-to-drink cocktail, but for the class, it had to be wine-based. That said, all these universities and their fancy libraries have all this data that I was so excited to get my hands on. And I saw a trend that not only was gin poised and ready for a renaissance in the US, because I think to your point, a lot of people think they don't like gin. They think it's like their grandma's and they're like not excited about it, or they've had one that's disgusting and too juniper forward. So we saw that gin had a lot of opportunity and that those canned cocktails, especially a more premium spirits-based version, were gonna do really well for the foreseeable future. And so
Mm.
instead of doing the smart thing, which would have been investing in a 401k or, Roth IRA, I had a family friend who introduced me to a company that could commercialize my family recipe. And
Mm.
so I spent the next 13 months going back and forth with the lab team to land on a sample that we really loved. Once we had the formula, I went out just to friends and family with this down and dirty pitch deck and was like, what do you think? Here's my value proposition. We're going to come in, we're going to try to tidy up the industry. You know, the RTD category is notoriously full of artificial colors and ingredients and preservatives. And so just taking this beauty blueprint that I had learned, where when you launch any product, you share the ingredient list and you educate the consumer, applying that to canned cocktails, which I hadn't really seen that be done before, was the idea, and people were really excited about it. So we just
Yeah.
decided to take the leap into this wonderful but crazy industry and have been really well received by the trade and consumers and are just thankful that our hypotheses paid off.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, beauty brand, first of all, your skin is gorgeous. Good on you.
What a
And
trial and error there.
and it's funny that you said like gin's got this resurgence. And it wasn't until I visited my daughter and her now husband. They're living in Brooklyn. We went to some bar, some gin bar, and it was a whole ritual of like
Mhm.
they came to the table with this crystal pitcher special stir, and it's like 100 times with just
Right.
the right amount of like they were explaining the whole thing of how to make a really good gin martini. Didn't make it taste any better for me personally, just because,
Right.
but it
Right.
was a beautiful presentation and
Right.
ritual and the rich history of gin. My maiden name is Fleischman, and there's Fleischman's yeast and gin and margarine, the whole thing. Somewhere in my family, we are related because it's spelled the same way. So anybody out there, you can send me your money. I'm plugging your gin, Fleischmann's gin. Uh, but yeah, I wish I liked it because it's clean. So take us on a journey of you've got this idea, and now you're creating recipes, I would imagine, and you got to get it in the can, and you have to get it produced.
Right.
So how did that all work out?
Yes, I think there is a disconnect sometimes between me as a founder, my dreams of what I could put into a can balanced with modern manufacturing capabilities. And so that's always something to take into account. And so the company that I hired to take literally just the recipe that I would make my own simple syrup. I would add in the different types of liquor and muddle the mint myself. And so we spent a fair bit of time saying, okay, how do we translate this into the can? And that's really where that company shined. It was not easy. There were so many revisions. That's why it took 13 months. What I had to do is just be very explicit in my end goal, which is okay, first and foremost, I want this to be USDA certified organic. That would limit the type of materials, raw materials that they were able to source and what would go into this. The second was I wanted it to be all natural. So that's going to limit the types of flavors, sugars, you name it, that also go into this. On top of that, a lot of ready to drink cocktails that you find are about 5 or 6% alcohol by volume. We are 10%. So we're about double what you find on
Yeah.
the shelf, which again impacts calories, amounts, things of that sort. So sitting down and having from day one in the contract, this is what I want. So that way we kind of are all on the same page, knowing that when you get the samples after that, like, you're going to be in an okay position. So we knew from day one that we'd be able to be Whole Foods compliant. We knew from day one that we weren't going to contain this no list that some of these more natural grocers institute. And I think that was the biggest piece in terms of turning this into a can. The second is obviously the flavor. When you make a cocktail at home, kind of like you're talking about, you have no control over the content, the alcohol by volume. Yeah, you might get a little loose-handed with a shot, and so that could be a little bit more or less. And so balancing the heavy 10% gin was something that we also had to think about. And that's where our use of organic sugar comes in, because it cuts the intensity a little bit. I always joke with people, there's something a little like masochistic about a martini. You're like, I'm punishing myself by drinking this, but I love them. And so gin especially in that format with nothing to necessarily cut through, can be super, super polarizing. So, starting with something like a Southside or a Tom Collins or something that does have a little bit of citrus to kind of brighten and lighten the botanicals that you get is a great way to do it. And so what we've actually found with this product is that it serves as a really good starting point for people who don't think that they like gin or who have been super polarized in the past by like a bad gin and tonic or something like that. And I think you touched on this a little earlier. I didn't know this because I didn't have an industry background, but coming into the spirits world, there's actually two different types of gin. The first is a distilled gin, and the second is a compound gin. So we are actually a compound gin. And I think that is also working in our favor because we're able to manipulate the amount of juniper a little bit better. So it's less aggressive and in your face. So it's a big thought process, is my long winded answer for you being like, what does this process look like? But I was super picky. I think when you think of a canned cocktail, you don't necessarily think of it being delicious. And I was going out to like debunk that. I was like, I want to prove to people that they can raise their expectations and have all of the cocktail and none of the compromise and it be in a can format.
So distilled versus compound. I mean, I didn't even know that. And how you explained, because then you've got more control of the ratio, I guess.
Yeah, my understanding, I mean, I'm not a alcohol scientist, is the juniper is what makes gin gin. So you either distill it with the juniper, and that's when you look at the gin bottle, it'll say distilled, and that means it's been distilled with the juniper. Someone's going to listen to this and be like, "No," but this is what I've been told. And compound means that you have a like grain neutral spirit, so they call it GNS, and then you add in the botanicals versus distilling with the botanicals.
Okay, so a grain neutral. So vodka's distilled from potato, let's say. So is that what you mean? You're using something else to create alcohol and then you're adding gin flavor? Or it's all gin from the get-go?
Once you add in the juniper, it can be classified as gin. And so
Ah,
you have the grain neutral spirit is actually, my understanding, different than just like a vodka. And so ours is actually distilled from sugarcane, which is great. So that gives us kind of a really nice base blend. And then we spent the time looking at like rose and cardamom and some of these other things that we wanted to add in to build on the natural botanical profile of everything. And I was never a super juniper forward person. Like I don't love a Bombay Sapphire. My preferred gins were Grey Whale and Hendrix. So I gravitated towards a much more floral gin. And I think that also gets reflected in the can when you try it because to your point, it is a little bit less sharp there.
yeah, it's delicious, like I said. And I tried it, obviously.
Thank you.
uh, because I wanted to have this experience with you on the show. I'm not like a slacker, but I was glad that I liked it because I was afraid that I wouldn't.
Right.
And it is very bright and very delicious, especially over ice. And I'm sitting here staring at this can over here, and I'm like, it is going to be summer. And I was thinking, although it's carbonated, it probably would be really good frozen.
It's great
Yeah.
frozen, and we also for summer recommend because we do use cane sugar in the ingredients. If you mix it like an Arnold Palmer, it's delicious. So that also helps dilute the ABV, so you can sip on it for a little longer if you want. But in the summertime, oh my gosh, those are great ways to do it, especially with the Ninja Slushy that came out. I have a bunch of friends who have tested it for me and been like, "This is
Yeah, yeah.
amazing." So yes,
Yeah. Well, because my next thought was the squeeze packs. They're like daiquiri in a
yeah, yep,
bag,
yep, 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 yep,
basically.
yep.
So are you gonna be developing things like, oh, those slushy the ice pop, you
Yep,
squeeze the bottom, like, freezer pops, whatever
yeah.
those are called. So although you might not be diving into other flavors, are you also sort of considering other variations on how to deliver this product or 0?
Not at the moment, but I always tell people, retailers, distributors, if you feel that there's a need for something like that, we work with wonderful manufacturing partners that can kind of make our dreams come true.
Mm,
So I've been asked everything from Southside's on tap to your idea of it being frozen or almost in like popsicle format. And so
mhm.
we haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet, but because we are so able to be flexible with just the formula itself, and it does lend itself to being combined or standing on its own or being frozen, never say never.
All right. So I want to pivot for a bit. You've got this brand, and do you have a family? And how is your work life balance? Because you got to hustle just a little bit when you're
Yes.
growing a business. So has that been a challenge? And have you found a nice pace for yourself at this point?
Yes. So through and through, this is a family business. And what I appreciate about it is it has brought me so much closer to my parents who helped me quite a bit with this. And my dad has just a really wonderful background across a number of different areas. And so we've been able to get into a rhythm. It wasn't always like this, it was a little bit rocky to get there, to your point. We've gotten into a really great rhythm of me calling and saying, "Hey, this is your, founder and CEO calling," versus, "Hey, this is your daughter calling." I think just being explicit in the hats that you wear with your family are really important because you can so easily cross the lines and boundaries. And then I live with my husband and our 10-year-old dog named George. And so because I was fully remote, he was in the office and George and I would just kind of hang out all day. But where we really started to suffer was my ability to manage stress. And it's so easy to take that out on the people who are the closest to you and you spend so much time with. I will not lie. I mean, the first kind of launch in 18 months, we really had to get into a good rhythm and just communicate like, hey, you're being really mean to me right now. And this isn't my fault. It's not my fault that this distributor did this to you today. And I'm like, okay, you're right. And so we finally gotten into a rhythm, but it's taken us a while. And I think for me, when I sat down and decided to do this, we looked at each other and we were like, we are signing up for the rodeo. We do not know how long the rodeo will last. We do not know how crazy the rodeo will be, but we know that we have signed up for like a 5 to 7 year period at a minimum where things will not be set and stable. And I think approaching something with that mindset has been really helpful because you're like, okay, well, this is what we signed up for. This is what we're doing. And it's been a nice way to take the edge off a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned so many things that are touching on the woo side of the podcast, the real and the woo. So you mentioned handling stress. I love the way you just described because I'm in editing for a book that I'm writing, and I just submitted a chapter about the throat chakra. And the way you described your ability to communicate is huge because not every couple's able to speak their truth with kindness, which is what we want in the balanced throat chakra. It's
Yeah.
so often, you're mean to me, so I'm going to give you the cold shoulder. Passive aggressive behavior sets in. You're not really saying you're upset, but you clearly look upset. And even your dog knows that. So it's like you
Like,
can't hide. So it's beautiful that you described just a little arc, just a little snippet of your life. So thank you. But in that same way, have you developed any self care practices or ways to not take it out on your husband or your dog?
yes, and that has been something that I talk to other founders and pretty much everyone about. I try to be like, if you quantify it, like whatever your 80/20 90/10 is, for me, I try to be around 90/10. Most of the time it's 80/20. Is I'm taking perfect care of myself 80% of the time. So 5.5 days out of the week, whatever that number works out to be. And then I'm giving myself, the freedom to have a cocktail or, have a Diet Coke from McDonald's, whatever it is. I really make a concerted effort to move my body because I think that is so important in terms of stress management, either a walk or Pilates or something where your mind can kind of just take a breather for around an hour. And my friends and I always joke, like, it is so annoying that it really does work. And it makes you think of that Legally Blonde put the part of the movie where she's like, happy people don't kill their husbands. Endorphins make you happy. Like, it truly harkens back to that. So, and I am gluten free. My mom is celiac, and just really making a concerted effort to cook as much as possible at home, have control of those ingredients, take really good care of myself. I also really try to limit my screen time. I think for founders, something that can be really difficult is with the expectation to build out loud. with that comes a lot of inherent perceived competition, especially in other industries. The way that I'm able to perform or fundraise or act in consumer goods, especially in the vice category, is completely different than if I knew someone who was a tech founder. But when you're so in the moment and you're on your phone, you're not thinking of those nuances. I got one of the bricks. I don't know if you've seen those, but they're like, this is obviously not sponsored, but this has changed my husband and I's life. And you can
Oh,
set
it's like a scent?
no, so it's so you scan it with your phone and it basically turns your whatever apps you want, it turns it into a brick. So in the morning when I get up, I will brick my phone, and the apps that are impacted are all social media. So TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn, because it's easy to spend a lot of time on, all of those platforms. And I will not be able to access them through the web, through the app at all until I unbrick my phone physically. And I have it on purpose next to my desk because most of the time, if I'm walking around or if I leave, then my phone's just still, in basically dumb phone mode. And so I would say the combination of the exercise and the diet and really trying to be strict on social media have made the biggest impacts.
Oh, I've never heard of that. It's a
Awesome.
forceful way to create a boundary. If you're unable to not pick up your phone or look at your screen, then that's a great tool. That's amazing. And I did a podcast episode just on my own about the importance of setting good boundaries is self-care. I say self-care is health care. So any way you move your body or find that moment just to take some breath. I'm a yoga instructor, also Reiki practitioner. And so I do meditate, but I didn't always. But I realize, and this is what I always say to people too, anything you do that just gets your mind in a zone other than the crazy train,
Yes.
taking a walk, riding a bike, shopping for your favorite shoes for an hour, that's very meditative and desirable. It's not always about spending the money. It's just having an activity that's just mindless in a way to get you to just recenter. Wow, that's interesting, that brick thing. So, all right. And then you threw a term out I've never heard. You said you're in the vice section.
A vice category. So think THC, alcohol, consumer vices is how sometimes when you're speaking to investment groups that do invest in consumer goods, but they may not invest in vice. I've spoken to a lot of people who do invest in beverage, but they do not invest in alcoholic beverages. And so inherently that's just a term that it can be called.
Wow, that makes it even more badass, like Southside.
Yeah, vice. Yeah. Yeah.
So, are you located in the South Side?
We're located all over the place in terms of
Yeah.
retail locations, but I grew up in New York. Currently,
Yeah.
I'm in Southern California, and so I actually don't have any family ties to Chicago. It just so happens that that was the origin story.
All right. I think I knew that and I forgot, but now I'm thinking about Shameless, right? It's too bad you weren't around when that show was on because they probably would have enjoyed it on that
Oh,
show.
100%. I know. You never know. There could be a reboot.
Maybe you could get a plug on The Bear.
Oh my gosh. The dream. That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
And if that happens, you got to give me a little kickback.
Yeah.
And now it's time for Joy on the Fives. So, Meredith, in this moment, what is bringing you joy?
My gosh. It is one of those seasons where I feel like I am just really dialed across the board outside of Southside's, like my personal life, my relationships with my friends, my relationships with my family. And I think it's a really special time where everyone's health is good, everyone is in a good headspace, and we're able to see each other a lot. And the continued investment in those connections is making me very, very joyful because I have experienced when it's out of whack, and it is amazing how much that can throw you off. So I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful share. Thank you for sharing. So, you mentioned gluten free.
Yep.
This beverage is gluten free.
Yep.
And then the 10% by volume, for example, like other beverages in cans that we know, we all know the brands, but they're like 5 or 6%, like a beer. Does that shift you into a different category of these canned beverages because of your volume of alcohol? Or you're just badass like a Chimay? Like Chimay, I think has like 9%
Right.
beer.
So ABV, that alcohol by volume, means that 10% of my total liquid volume is that alcohol. And so it is, to your point, generally double the strength of like a standard 5% beer, which is, it's just a choice at that point. So what I wanted and the purpose for us doing that is I was so tired of feeling like I had to drink multiples of something
Mm.
to achieve the same goal. And I classify myself as an efficiency drinker. I'm a one or two martini and done person. And
Mhm.
so it just depends on personal preference there. But to go to the portion about does this put us in like a different place? One thing that I want to call out about canned cocktails is some of them can be kind of sneaky. So there is a term, FMB, which stands for flavored malt beverage. A lot of these canned cocktails are FMBs in disguise. You go to the liquor store, you pick something up that says margarita or ranch water, and you buy it, you get home and you realize that it's made with malt liquor and not actual tequila. And that has not only increased all this trial fatigue, but created this category attrition because you already have people who don't really want to spend a ton of money outside the home. The world and the economy are in such an insanely weird place. And the only division for us is so we're not an FMB. We are a spirits based RTD, which is great. And then you can segment that further by state. So we'll take Florida, for example. Because of that 10% alcohol by volume, we are over the threshold that can be carried in a grocery store. And
Mm.
so we have to be in the liquor store. Then you take a state like my home state of Oklahoma, where all spirits are in the liquor store and they're independent liquor stores versus the grocery store, which can only sell wine and beer. Then you move to California. So we're going across the country here. And so then you move to California where you can buy literally anything at the grocery store. You can buy tequila, you can buy beer. I love it. It's so nice because it's a one stop shop. So that is actually another part of this too, where you often hear people say when you launch an alcoholic beverage in the United States, it's like working with 50 different countries because each state has different rules and laws and everything. So those are kind of the two ways that we've been segmented. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're still classified as a ready to drink cocktail. It's just the specifics beyond that are we're not an FMB and we are considered high ABV, which is great because it's a good differentiator. But sometimes people still want the lower stuff. So you'll find that
Mm.
it's personal preference.
But like at the top of the show, I was saying how I tended to use those malt beverage brands because they're
Right.
5 or 6% alcohol,
Right.
and you don't want to drink 10 of them just to get a buzz. And so I would add the
Right.
tequila or I would add the vodka. And like,
Right.
so, like I said, it's a mixer, but you don't
Yep.
have to add anything to yours. So you're saving money and you're getting the same results. It's organic and gluten free and pretty good for you, I would imagine, because some alcohol is okay.
Alcohol is such a funny world because you and I both try to take really good care of ourselves. There are people out there that live really healthy lifestyles that still want to take the edge off. Like we all drink for a reason. And we all agree that the term healthy drinking is an oxymoron, but there
Yeah.
are objectively ways to drink better, meaning they don't have these artificial ingredients, they don't have these artificial colors, they use better sourced things. And so that's the conversation that we really try to drive with people. For example, there are two preservatives that are really common in the industry that are artificial, and one of them is called sodium benzoate. And when sodium benzoate is combined with it's called ascorbic acid. And I knew this from my beauty days too. Ascorbic acid is just vitamin C, which for us,
Mhm.
we've got plenty, lemons, there is a risk that it can produce benzene, which is an additional cancer causing substance. And so people often ask me, they're like, well, if alcohol is a carcinogen, why should I care about this? I'm like, well, the FDA has known about benzene in food and beverage and this reaction since the 90s. They're not going to do anything to tell you about this. And I say it because why would you introduce additional harm. It just doesn't make sense. If you're going to go as far down that rabbit hole and you're going to really follow that logic, why don't processed foods have even worse ingredients? It's like you need to limit where you can. And that's the areas we have full control over with this cocktail. So,
Okay, I love, 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 love because I've only met with you and one other female
right, right,
founder.
right, right.
Okay, so but just this little cross sample, the overarching theme of the work that I do and everything that I'm writing about, speaking about, promoting is whether we know it or not, moving into the age of Aquarius, which asks us to change how we lead. Okay. And
Yep.
we can already feel it. So, the division that we're feeling for lots of reasons, one of them is we're moving from the male driven ego, think it through, to the divine feminine, no matter your gender, of feel it through. And
Yeah.
when we operate and lead from our heart, we are better able to make decisions that take care of ourselves and those we're feeding or encouraging to drink or whatever our beverage. And so the two female founders I've met care very much about what they're putting in their beverages. They care very much about the quality control of their beverages in an industry that is just as sneaky as any other.
Right.
Saying on a label that you're one thing doesn't mean that you're actually that thing. And so
Right.
I love the way that you're kind of busting a lid off of, this industry in a way that shows care and integrity and authenticity, and the fact that it's a family recipe is like 1,000% amazing. And I just really like that that's the way you're leading by example. And that's fantastic. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting too that to do something like this, you do want to put your money where your mouth is. Like if I'm going to talk to you about the care that I take of myself, I'm not going to put something out there that I wouldn't personally consume, which is also why I co-founded the Clean Alcohol Collective to do something similar, which is to promote ingredient integrity and transparency. Because I don't know if you know this, because I didn't know this when I was moving into the industry, but right now, as the laws stand today, you are actually not legally required to put an ingredient list or nutrition facts panel. And to me, that was wild. And for our first production run, I thought, well, people must not be asking for this information. So I didn't put it on. It was a very small run. It was our test run. And the amount of questions I got immediately were, what's in this? I was like, we're doing this the other way. We are going full transparency. As of last week, we're the first ready to drink cocktail in the country that is certified glyphosate free through the Detox Project, which is really exciting. And I think when people hear this, because I completely agree with you, I think leading with your heart and leading with integrity and leading with soul is not only better for you at the end of the day, like I can sleep with myself, but there is a misconception that quality and profitability are mutually exclusive. That's not the case. It's just uncomfortable for the incumbents in this industry. When I tell you that we have industry leading gross margins, I mean it. And it proves that you really can have a clear path to profitability, which is how we survive in business. It's not the sexy, fun stuff to talk about, but it can also change industry landscapes. So I think both can be true, and I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, what is the Clean Alcohol Collective? Could you explain that?
Of course, the Clean Alcohol Collective was created. This is so cheesy, but listen, low hanging fruit. We're going to raise the bar, okay, on ingredient transparency and integrity in alcohol. So I was introduced to my co-founder, Connor Bedgley. He also comes from a beauty background, and his approach with beer, his brand's name is Fathers. His approach with beer was the approach that I was taking with spirits, which is disclosing the ingredients, being certified organic, and just promoting that transparency is not a trend and you should not be making compromises. Like this is alcohol done right. So we got together and we were like, why is there not some sort of collective or group that is promoting brands that already follow these guidelines? Because, we're not the first to do this. There are so many people that have come before us to pave the way for us to be able to even do this and talk about this. So taking our past lives of think Allure Best of Beauty meets USDA organic meets the clean section at Sephora, we thought, okay, well, where that was really successful was creating a divide in consumers' minds where if I'm looking at something, it says clean at Sephora and it's next to something is the equivalent product and it's not, what's in the product that's not clean? Like, why would I pick that one? So we have the requirements of you have to be a real beer, wine, or spirit. So we're not going to take a malt based RTD. We require that the majority, so 90% plus, of your beverage is made with organic ingredients, bonus points for the organic certification. We have a lengthy no list, which we just borrowed from retailers who have already created this. So think Bristol Farms, Whole Foods, Erewhon. We weren't going to reinvent the wheel here. So we just took their no list and then we also push for that ingredient transparency angle, which is the packaging needs to have a nutrition facts panel. We are going to request that all of the ingredients are clearly listed and have full disclosure on any like non-flavor ingredients. So natural flavors, like you have to disclose those. You don't have to disclose what's in them, but we want to make sure that there are some common things that hide in natural flavors, like propylene glycol, maltodextrin, things of that sort. So we make sure that those are not included in the natural flavors. So that's really where we started, and it launched at the end of December. And in addition to Connor and I's brands, we just onboarded 4 more, which is really exciting. We've got 3 in the pipeline. And our goal is we see the headlines about alcohol consumption. Like we see that there's been a reset from these highs of COVID. But what I want people to understand is people are still drinking. So the Clean Alcohol Collective exists to educate consumers on how to make better choices. Like stop betting against booze and let's make real changes in an industry that is not slowing down.
This is such a good segue because I don't know if this collective has a tagline, but when you're talking earlier, and I was also saying, like, 10% you're going to save money because you don't have to add extra
Right.
alcohol. There's that adage work smarter, not harder. And
Yeah.
I would say this whole conversation and what you're doing is about drinking smarter, not harder. And that's so true. And you want to be smart about everything you're putting into your body, whether it's what you hear and see, boundaries like we talked about. But understanding what you're drinking and eating is
Right.
smart and it should be easier, right?
We shouldn't have to guess what we're putting in our bodies ever. And so
No.
there is a trend of, less but better. And so why not take advantage of it? Why not educate people? And I always tell people you should be very wary of brands that do not publish this information because why wouldn't they? Like, what is stopping a company from doing that? And then you kind of leave it with them. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because it was probably just a few months ago and I was interested in buying like a mixer, let's say. And I saw a brand I'd never heard of at the grocery store because here in Illinois, we can sell alcohol at the grocery store. And they had no nutrition facts. So it
mhm.
said low calorie, no sugar. But how did I really know? And then when I Googled it,
Oh,
in fact, it wasn't. It was like full of sugar. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is that possible? I didn't buy it. But that's
right.
exactly why I didn't buy it, and I pass up so many things if I cannot see what's in it, and
Mhm.
whether it's, like you said, the Diet Coke every once in a while from McDonald's, at least I know I'm doing that, right? At
Right.
least I know. So we're just drink smarter, not harder.
I love that. No,
I
listen,
just
I'm gonna take that from you because it's so true.
please do.
It's so
You
true.
can get me another hat. It'll say drink
Yes.
smarter, not harder.
Okay, be careful what you wish for, so.
Oh, well, this has been so delightful. I would love for you to tell everybody how to find you, how to purchase your beverage if it's online or what states, however you want to describe it. And if there's any sort of fundraising efforts or giving back that you typically do, just, lay it on everybody.
Okay, perfect. Well, best way to find us is we do have an account finder on our website. So you can visit drinksouthsides.com and give us a follow on Instagram, which is where, we kind of have everybody pop into our world there. We do ship online. So if we are not super close to you, there is that option and opportunity. And it's been so nice to have the platform to, tell my story and just share all about Southsides. So those are the best ways to find us.
All right, great. And also behind you, I love that. That's fresh as fuck. I would like that on a tank top, please, because I only wear tank tops. And so I'm just
Listen.
going to be outfitted by Southside. I'm so excited.
First of all, I would love that. Second of all, yeah, so that's actually
Yeah.
it's funny, you as of a few years ago, you can trademark the F word, and so that's actually our tagline, but for whatever reason, the TTB does not allow curse words on packaging, so it's not on any of our stuff for that reason.
Yeah.
It's just so fun because when you try it, you're like, "Oh, that is fresh." Some would say fresh as fuck,
Yeah.
so
Fresh as fuck. Well, I think it should also just be a new phrase, like for a new idea. Oh, that's fresh as fuck. I
I
like that.
agree. Let's make it
And then
happen.
the other thing that's coming to me now is, the Savannah bananas.
Oh my god, I
Um,
love them.
the
Yes.
color of your can fits right in with them. Are you talking to them and saying, "Hey, sell in your ballpark"?
I wish. Listen, again, if I
Let's
will start,
go.
let's go.
Let's
We'll take a trip to the Savannah Bananas, and I
all right.
will beg on my hands and knees for them to take this product because
I'll
I
I'll
love
offer them free yoga, like, but I'll do a stretch before they play, or I'll do a meditation at the end, and I'm sure
perfect.
they'll really dig us.
I think
And I
I
can
think
play.
listen, we're a dangerous combo, so I think so. I think so.
And this is without alcohol. We just have fun, right?
Great.
So, cheers to you, and thank you
Cheers.
so, so much for being on The Real and The Woo. It is a total pleasure to get to know you.
Thank you again.